Today on Locked On Red Wings, Robby Fabbri is ramping up towards a return, but how will that return affect the forward lines?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's us over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. On today's episode, guys, we're going to be talking about the Robby Fabbri situation. Ansar Khan tweeted out after today's practice that Derek Lalonde had said that Robby Fabbri is inching closer to a return, ramping up at practice, and should be back sometime next week. Now, granted, we've heard that before when he was day-to-day, that he would be back any day now. So I'm holding my breath, but we will talk about the impact that his return will have on the Red Wings roster, as well as previewing the game against the Florida Panthers, an important 2 points as it is an in-division game. But first, I got to tell you guys, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. All right, Scotty, first of all, happy Thursday. This is a Thursday episode, so happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, man.
Yep, we're getting a little closer. We got a game day today. You know, we were just talking, it's funny before we get into it. We were talking about before we started recording about how we've kind of been blessed as Red Wings fans. This was the first 2-day span for us as we record where we've had 2 off days in a row. We've been really lucky in the entire first month of the season. We've gone recap, preview, with just like maybe 1 day off in between. We had legitimately 2 days off for the first time in a month. And we've been pretty blessed that, Red Wings have been consistently giving us action to talk about.
It's going to catch up with us, let me tell you. But we'll take it for now.
We'll take it for now as the season gets started and we start noticing these trends. But yeah, the point of today's episode, guys, we'll lead off here with Robby Fabbri. Like I mentioned, Ansar Khan had tweeted out that Derek Lalonde said Robby Fabbri was ramping up his routines at practice, getting back into it, and should be back sometime next week. And that makes me wonder, like, one, where does Robby Fabbri fit in the lineup? And two, if you do find a place to fit, where will it be at? Because, and I think the easy answer is to say, oh, well, the forward lines just go back to the way they were prior. But, a lot has changed in the 9 games that Robby Fabbri has missed. We found a really nice shutdown line on that second line. And now with David Perron, only 1 game with David Perron on that second line, they've produced quite a bit. JT Kampf really took over that game with the Islanders. And of course, Joe Veleno has stepped up big time on the third line. Like, some huge changes have had to occur in that middle six with him out. And Joe Veleno, namely, is going to be the name of consequence, I feel, in this conversation when talking about what happens when Robby Fabbri comes back.
Yeah, man, it's a pretty fascinating conversation because I think I talk about this a lot on my Tiger show as well. Is like the beautiful thing about sport is that there is a million different ways to lose and a million different ways to win, right? Like there's a infinite amount of ways to build a roster, to set a roster, to set lines, etc. And a lot of them will work and a lot of them won't work. And so there's I think multiple right answers here. I don't think there's just like one, like, oh, it's obviously this, which is, I think, what makes this such a fascinating conversation. I think it is tough because of what to do with the second line is tough. And then, like you said, Veleno's obviously a big talking piece. I think I want to start with the second line thing, like the Rasmussen Kampfer line obviously got broken up. I think most people were pretty pleased to see that it got broken up. And while the line was more productive with Perron there, Perron himself didn't look like incredible in that game. And
it was still
how much
better.
Weight are we putting into like one hockey game? You know what I mean? Like I think Lalonde, and you've mentioned this before, I think Lalonde is very much we're going to keep rolling with something until it stops working, and then we're going to adjust accordingly. I think that he's proven to be that type of a coach when it comes to lines so far in his Red Wings career. But I don't know, man. If that second line isn't producing more, I wouldn't be against throwing Fabbri up there on the second line and giving him an opportunity. And in the same breath, when we talk about what happens with Veleno, I think that we also then are talking about what happens with Kopp. Are we married to the idea that Comfer and Kopp have to be on the same line? A month ago, before opening night, we were like set in stone that Kopp was the 3C of this team this year. And now that's just like completely changed. And Kopp has played next to Comfer all but opening night. So I think there's a few different moving parts here that Fabbri is going to obviously affect.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And you mentioned the second
Comfer
line
for 2C though.
Well, and that's another thing too, and you even mentioned it, long term. We did an episode over the summer before the trade for, I think it was before the trade for DeBrincat or the trade for Petrie had occurred. I think it was the trade for Petrie had occurred, where we tried to guess what the forward lines would be, and short term and long term. And long term, you had said that eventually you want to see Kopfer and Comp play on the same line as Kasper or Danielson take over the center role in either the 2C or the 3C role, coming out of juniors / AHL, wherever they're coming out of. And, we got a taste of that early on in the season here. And, they played well together in a shutdown role, but they weren't producing a lot of offense. But as soon as they put Perron on their wing rather than Rasmussen, again, one game, they were fantastic. And as you said, that I said, Malone's not going to change it up as long as that line keeps producing. So if Fabbri were to come back tomorrow, I don't think he'd slot in on the second line, because you got a lot of production on JT Compher and Andrew Kopp in that second line. And while Perron looked like he was a step behind and maybe out of sync with that line, he himself did not have a bad game. He just looked a little bit out of sync with the rest of that line. Long term, I do think that you could see Perron get demoted back down to line 3, and then you could see Fabbri go on line 2. But there's another scenario too, where with another consequence of Robby Fabbri's injury had to be because the fact that JT Compher and Andrew Kopp have been rotating winger center on the second line because Fabbri's out and he can't play on that second line anymore while he was out. That made Joe Veleno get promoted to 3C in a role in which he has produced 5 goals in 10 games for him. He's been phenomenal up until this game against the Islanders. He was pretty much the only depth forward that was scoring any goals for the Detroit Red Wings, outside like an odd, I don't know if you can call Compher a depth forward on this team because he's second line, but you know what I mean? Anyone outside the top line, really. It was just Joe Veleno up until this last game where Compher and Sprong put the puck in the back of the net. So I don't think that, again, you're not going to change up what's working, right? You're not going to send down Zarnik to demote Joe Veleno to the fourth line to make space for Robby Fabbri on the second line or the third line, whatever that may be. Like, you want to keep what is working. And Joe Veleno has been working hard, and he's been getting results, whether that shows up on the score sheet or not. He looks like he deserves the 13 minutes a night he's been getting, not 5 minutes a night that the fourth line gets on any given night, because that's how Malone runs this. Fourth line goes out there as a spark plug, PK in a lot of instances for Christian Fischer. But they get like 5-6 minutes a night. Jonathan Berggren is only getting 5-6 minutes a night. So I don't want to see Joe Veleno go back to that. I really don't. I don't think that benefits him or behooves him in any way, shape, or form. So you have a hole on 4C, and you're not putting Compher on 4C. You're not putting
Kopp on 4C, or
you're not.
Like you again, what you just said, you'd like Veleno to get more minutes than that.
So I mean, you're presented with this decision to make on
in Zarnik we trust.
No, I don't think so. Because
I agree with you. But
well, think about it. With Fabbri active, and I believe they have the roster space. Let me double check. I think they're only carrying 22 players right now. Technically, yeah, they're carrying 22 players with Austin Zarnik. So they could activate Fabbri, keep Zarnik up as like a healthy scratch, and rotate a player in and out. That is completely a possibility. But they've shown that they don't want to carry a full roster of 23. They want to have 22. Austin Zarnik, you place him on waivers or send him down, he's not going to get picked up. It's not going to happen. It's a great depth piece. He's been great on the fourth line with the Detroit Red Wings, really filling that role, but he is literally a replacement level player. Every team has those. I don't worry about Zarnik getting picked up off waivers. I think he gets sent down, and when that happens, you now have a role at 4C you have to fill, and I think it gets filled in one of 3 ways if this is the route you want to go. If you want to keep JT Compher and Andrew Kopp together on line 2 and keep Joe Veleno as the center of line 3, I think it gets filled in one of 3 ways. But I'm going to wait until after the break to tell you what that is.
I was gonna ask. I think we should just start throwing line combos out there and see what we like and don't like.
Yeah. So we're going to do that in segment 2. That's what you call a professional tease there, Scotty.
That's journalism with a capital J, baby.
Absolutely. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. The Red Wings could hoist the Stanley Cup. Alex DeBrincat on pace for 50 goals. Joe Veleno on pace. Well, probably not 45 now after the last game he didn't score. Maybe just 42 or 41 now. Who knows? Joe Veleno, phenomenal. And you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is the #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you got to do is pick whether studs like McDavid, Alex DeBrincat, Jake Wallman will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in any given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Red Wings fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Also got to talk to you guys today about Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. You just got to find that talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring right now. Again, that is Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed, you do.
Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are talking about what to do with Robby Fabbri, and I had posed the question that if you want to keep Compher and Kopp together on line 2, you want to keep Joe Veleno as your 3C, that is going to cause a vacancy in the 4C position because 2 of your centers are playing on line 2.
Can I guess one of yours?
Go for it.
I'm going to say, actually, maybe I take it back because I don't think you want him to play that few minutes.
You haven't taken anything back yet because you didn't say anything.
Yeah. In my head, I took it back, though.
Well, okay. I think we actually are on the same page because you need a player who plays center, right? I think the most likely situation is Christian Fischer, who has played center historically. He's not listed as a center on Cap Friendly or any publication, but I know he has played some center minutes in the NHL with the Arizona Coyotes. I believe at least. I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure you have.
The reason why I like that as well is because you are clearly like Fischer is an asset to this team. Like this is not the, like when we first acquired him, we were talking like, oh, maybe 13th forward or he gets some penalty kill time, whatever. Like he is a legitimate asset to this hockey team. And he is a defensive forward that is a plus contributor on the penalty kill nearly every single time we go on the PK. So like I think that it's easy to make that move happen, even if he doesn't have a ton of experience at NHL center. If it's just going to be 5 to 7 minutes a night at playing fourth line center, and then still with his minutes that he's going to get a lot at the penalty kill night to night basis, I think that's somebody that they're clearly comfortable out on the ice. So that wouldn't shock me for sure.
Yeah, that's my number one go-to, I think, is you move him over to the forward line, you send Zarnik down, but then you have to fill somebody on the wing. But we've seen it in the past too, where the Red Wings are comfortable running 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. Of course, that means that you still have another forward who's odd man out. You haven't really solved where Fabbri is going to slot in at that point. But I mean, I'm okay with putting a guy like Robby Fabbri on the wing on the 4th line, or even my second solution was center on the 4th line, because Robby Fabbri also has experience and a history playing some center. It has been proven at this point he's a better winger than he is a center. So I would usually stay away from that. It's just fact. He's a better winger than a better center. But that being said, I mean, he needs time to ramp up at the NHL level, right? At least the very beginning, while you're trying to figure out how he fits. You could add a little bit of an offensive punch to a 4th line that needs it, while playing a gritty position. The 4th line is a gritty line, and he actually does surprisingly bring a little bit of a physical presence, which is surprising given how fragile he is. Got to wrap him in bubble wrap. But you can also get him back acclimated to the NHL speed because he's coming off of the IR. So that's, I know, just a temporary solution, whether it be center or wing on the 4th line. And then, of course, my third solution, Scotty, was going to say maybe Michael Rasmussen, another player you've put at center multiple times throughout his career to test it out. I think he's looked good at center. Of course, I don't want him playing that few of minutes. I understand that. But if that opens up an immediate spot on winger in the middle 6, Michael Rasmussen, unfortunately, has kind of gotten off to a slow start. I'll own up to it as much as I love Michael Rasmussen. He's gotten out to a little bit of a slow start with the season this year. Put him on the 4th line, put Robby Fabbri in, who you think is going to inject a little bit more offense in the middle 6. Even if that means you can then demote Perron down to a 3rd liner long term, if that 2nd line begins to stagger again, and then put him back up, Fabbri rather, on the 2nd line. And then there's your offensive punch with JT Compher and Andrew Kopp. Now, granted, Robby Fabbri's a little bit of a defensive black hole, while Kopfer and Comp are really strong defensively. So I'm not sure what the chemistry there would be. But those are my 3 possible solutions, besides just going back to what we did in game 1, which would be down the middle, Larkin, Comfer, Kopp, Veleno.
For sure. And I do think that there's a possibility that just go back to that. I don't think that that's like out of the realm of possibility. I just think that Lalone clearly seems to be fond of Kopp and Comfer on the same line. I think it almost makes more sense to map out what the middle 6 is going to look like, and then that will just kind of give us a clear picture of what the 4th line will then be. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
What does we talked about the 2nd line, we've talked about the 4th line. What does your 3rd line look like? That's like the biggest question mark of this entire thing. Is Veleno your 3C? It sounds like he is if you were calling the shots. Like, I think determining the 3rd line kind of inherently determines the line above and below it, to be honest.
I mean, with how things have been panning out right now with the Detroit Red Wings, I think your 2nd line long-term, it's tough to say because
it's also, there's going to be some blending like this. We're not going to come to the conclusion on November 2nd of what the 4 lines are going to look like for the last 72 games of the season. Like there's going to be a lot of movement still. It's just like in the short term, like I think mapping out what the 3rd line is, it kind of like A, answers all your questions, and B, is the biggest question mark because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I like keeping JT and Kopp together because I do think that they're building chemistry. We saw it in the last game. Like they finally began to click, and obviously the change to that 2nd line maybe had something to do with it. Maybe I'm putting too much credit on David Perron. They could have just had a good game, which is also entirely possible. But I like keeping JT and Kopp together on that 2nd line. But I'm also not opposed to demoting somebody like Kopp either. I really think JT Compher should stay on the 2nd line regardless. Putting Kopp down
is your 2C. Do not get it
twisted. And historically, as much as I liked when we signed Kopp as being the solution to 2C, historically Kopp has been a better winger than a center.
Yeah.
And I recognize that. Defensively, he's good at winning faceoffs. He's a penalty kill type of guy as well. But I'm not opposed to keeping him on the wing. I guess I need to stop sitting on the fence. I'm going to give you 2 lines right now, and this is just off the dome. I have Kopp, Compher, Fabbri line 2. I have Sprong, Veleno, and then either David Perron or Michael Rasmussen on the wing for line 3. And then with line 4 would be your Perron / Rasmussen, whatever one doesn't slot in on line 3, Costin and Fisher. The reason why I'm okay with putting Perron on line 4 is because clearly in my eyes, at least through the first 10 games, his speed is catching up with him. His age is catching up with him. He's not quite there speed-wise. And if you can keep Christian Fischer on the roster on the fourth line and just have him go out there as like your penalty kill specialist, you can do the same thing with David Perron at the power play. Have him go out there, shoot a lot of pucks, block the front of the net on the power play, have him eat. He'll still get, with the power plays, and as many penalties are getting called, he'll still get like 8 to 10 minutes a night, a lot of that being in the power play.
So, to me, it sounds like we've come to the conclusion that there is an odd man out in the top three lines between Fabbri, Perron, Rasmussen, and that's it.
Yeah, those are the three.
Maybe you can throw Sprong in there, I guess, if you felt like it. But no, I think
he's good.
I think he's a middle six, third liner at this point. So, like, which one of those three, I guess, is kind of the question of which one of those three is a fourth liner.
I think to start, it's Robby Fabbri. I don't think you can.
I would agree. And it's more so because of the injury thing than performance.
Yeah.
Let him work. And it's something that, by American Thanksgiving could change. Like, you know what I mean?
What about American Christmas?
American Christmas, as Brian says.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And that's more or less just you don't want to mess up with the chemistry of what the team has got going on without him. Or when he was out, plus
but they could also go out there and the second line could look terrible tonight, and then we have one good game and one bad game, and you're like, okay, well.
But that's why this is such a fun thought experiment,
right?
So yeah. I think Scotty and I have given you a couple of really solid ideas.
I really think it's between those three, though. I agree that it's one of those three guys has to get the boot from the top 9. And it's just a conversation of which one of those three is going to play fourth line, and I would lean Fabbri, just given the lack of minutes he's played this season and coming off of an injury. That kind of makes sense. But
which also, I mean, think about how good that sounds. I mean, obviously we love Fabbri and we think he can be a 20-goal scorer if he ever stays healthy for a full 82-game season. Right. But think about the fact that a guy who you used to have to put on your top line and second line consistently is now your fourth line winger. Like that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, same with the other two guys too. Same with Rasmussen and Perron, obviously.
And that's called depth, guys. We got to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to preview the Florida Panthers game, an important 2 points for the Red Wings before they head in the weekend to play Boston again. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Scotty, we've been talking all season, man. I've been taking money lines like crazy, just dogs after dogs after dogs, and I've been doing pretty well. Now, granted, I only ever bet $1 because I'm responsible. Everyone should be responsible and know their limits, right? But I've been winning. I've been on a good stretch. I made a little bit of money last night. I bet
Ryan's added a whole $4 to his wedding fund. He's feeling pretty good about himself.
Last night would have been like $1.14. So I bet
in total, like in your life.
Oh yeah, total. Thank God Allison's a nurse. Anyways, so the Kings were road dogs against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and my buddy Kenny, we were talking, and I was like, "Listen, man," he said, "Listen, man, never bet against the Kings. They're for some reason consistently dogs against other playoff teams, and they're good." And I took his advice. I bet Kings, put a whole $1 down. I think they were like plus 114. I made 214. So minus the $1 I bet, I made a whopping $1.14 for the wedding fund. You are welcome, Allison. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. I hope everyone knows I'm joking about putting the money I win through gambling into the wedding fund. I do contribute, guys, real money. Let's talk about the Florida Panthers game. It's an important 2 points for the Red Wings for many different reasons. One, you're coming off a losing skid and you want to try and get that ball rolling again. It's against a divisional opponent you have yet to face, and then you have another divisional opponent on the other side. So this game is kind of like an important, I wouldn't call it a rubber match, because usually the rubber match is like if you're 1-1, you're going into the third game. In baseball terms, I don't know if you will follow baseball at all, Scotty, but that's what that means.
Thanks.
You're welcome, buddy. This is an important game to, I wouldn't say set the tone for the next one after that, because you don't want to look past the Florida Panthers, because despite their kind of sluggish start, they're not a bad hockey team by any stretch of the imagination. But that's exactly why this game's important. It's a divisional opponent that I think is, you look up and down their rosters, is a pretty good hockey team.
I think this is more important than Boston. Not because Florida's better than Boston, because no one's better than Boston right now. And I think most teams are looking at the Bruins on the schedule and going, there's a loss. So don't make it 2 in a row. Like, I'm not trying to be like super pessimistic. I'm obviously, I hope that we can right the wrong. And they played them for as much as they were outplayed. The score was close-ish against the Bruins for the first couple of periods of the first time we played them, but like, they're not losing. So it is imperative to go out there and at least get a point, if not 2 points, against the Panthers beforehand, so you can kind of give yourself a little bit of a cushion to where whatever happens against Boston, whether you hand them a regulation loss, which is rather rare this season, to put it lightly, or if you do just end up losing, like has been the way of the road against most of their opponents, you give yourself a win going into it. I think this is important because Boston is next. I think this is, if you're looking past this, you're doing it wrong. Like, this is the game you should be like kind of graying out Boston and be like, oh, we'll get to that when we get to it. Like, this is, and it's the next game up. Obviously, these are professionals. They know
You take it one at a time, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't really think that that NHL players and professional athletes like really do like look ahead or whatever. Like, you play the team in front of you, but I think this is super important because Boston is waiting on the doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for a little context. Florida Panthers currently are 4-3-1, 8 games played where you have played 10. So that's part of the reason why they're 6th in the Atlantic Division. They just have 2 less games than you, and that's going to stay the same when you play them tomorrow or today by the time you're listening to this. Of course, they took Boston to overtime and lost, so both teams got points out of that, which was fantastic. I say that with sarcasm. Heavy sarcasm is implied on that because you hate when 2 teams in your division go to overtime, so they both walk away with points. But, this is a team that is just for some reason a little bit disjointed early on in the season, despite the fact that and we'll talk about the reasons why they're not seeing a lot of success. I think there's one major reason, and it works to your benefit as a Detroit Red Wings fan. But Sam Reinhart leads the team with 11 points in 8 games played. Evan Rodriguez, 8 points in 8 games played. Alexander Barkov, 8 points in 7 games played. So you got a pretty good, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Selection, variety. That's the word, variety. Every episode, there's one word that escapes my mind when I go to use it as an adjective. There's a pretty good variety of players scoring for the Florida Panthers right now. But the Detroit Red Wings are much better in that category right now. With Dylan Larkin at 15 points in 10 games. I think Alex DeBrink is currently at 13 in 10 games. Joe Veleno, Moritz Seider's a point per game. And Gus Despair is just 1 point beneath a point per game. So the Red Wings have been getting scoring from the best players on their team. And we've talked about that a lot. But this game is really interesting for the Detroit Red Wings because Florida's really good at what you're bad at, and you're really good at what Florida's bad at. I think the main reason why the Florida Panthers have lost 4 games, and while they're 4-3-1, and they're technically 4-4 when you think about actual win-loss record, is because their penalty kill is 32nd in the league. And that works out to your major benefit because you currently have the 4th best power play in the league. The Red Wings do. Their penalty kill percentage right now is a whopping 67.9%. Scotty, that is not a good penalty kill.
Wolf.
Yes. And that's only through 8 games. I understand that. So everything's still a small sample size. But, I mean, that's a really bad sample size. 32nd in the league, the absolute worst, and you have one of the best power plays in the league. I know this is a perfect game actually to reignite your power play. You've kind of gone dry the last couple of games.
2 games without a power play goal.
Despite the win, those all came at even strength, be it 3v3 or 5v5 for the Detroit Red Wings against the Islanders. Like, this is a perfect opportunity to reignite that power play and get those points back up and get that rolling again. So, I mean, that's why I think when you're talking about the 3 keys of this game, Scotty, one of them is play an aggressive forecheck. Get back to that. You had an aggressive forecheck against the Islanders at the start of the first and throughout the entirety of the third. And the reason being, because one, when you do that, a lot of the times you end up having more shot attempts, more shots on net in general. You end up forcing the other team to take penalties too, because they get frustrated and they end up being lazy with the stick or accidentally tripping a guy, and that'll draw penalties in which you can showcase your power play against their penalty kill. Their power play, for what it's worth, is also not very good. 22nd in the league, so bottom 11 technically. If they're at 22nd, at 14.3%. The Red Wings are at 34% right now. So right there, like if you have a huge advantage on special teams over the Florida Panthers. That's going to go a long way to beating this team.
For sure. No, I don't have too much to add in that regard. You have one of the best power plays in the league, and you're going up against one of the worst penalty kills. That should be pretty self-explanatory. That should be something that you take advantage of 100%. Reimer's in net, right? Confirmed for this game. So that's a big thing. This is his third game of the season, and he's done pretty well through two.
Fourth, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what Evolving Hockey said. He had three games the other day. So let me double check on that, though.
No.
But anyways,
right.
It doesn't really matter.
I don't remember if he had played 2 or played 3 yet. If this was game 3 or game 4, I guess. So I believe you. Regardless, he's been pretty solid. I would say certainly his first game was really, really good. So yeah, man, I think that's going to be a something to watch in this game as well. Like Florida, this is game 4.
Yeah, game 4.
So he's got 3 under his belt. This is something we talked about this, a week and a half ago, maybe even 2 weeks ago now. We kind of brought up, like, look ahead at the schedule and find the Reimer starts. It's hard. The Wings have a tough schedule to kick off this season. They have a tough November, and there's not a lot of, like, blatant Reimer games. So this is important. If you're going to throw them out there against a team that literally made the Stanley Cup last year, you gotta step up, but you need Husso for Boston. So I don't disagree with the decision, but it's obviously a big decision that could either cost or benefit the Wings. So I think that's a really important, like, coaching decision to bring up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what's interesting is this would have been a perfect game to play Alex Lyon against his former team, but that's a situation that we have not addressed in a while because the Red Wings haven't done anything about it. He just hasn't played.
He was dressed. I think he's been dressed once this year. He was a backup one game. I think it was Reimer's last start. I think he was dressed as the backup, and that's the only time we've seen him.
That they might do that again. Maybe that's going to be the trend: is Reimer starts, Lyon backs up. Literally being third string. But anyways,
I mean, it's still only happened, I think, once. Maybe
that's neither here nor there. Well, I mentioned it too. Like this Florida Panthers team, their weakness suits your strength, but it's the vice versa as well. This Florida Panthers team, while the Red Wings still currently, as of recording this on Wednesday, lead the league in goals and 5v5 goals, despite their awful, we talked about it yesterday, bottom 10 in Corsi, shots for percentage, and expected goals for percentage. The Florida Panthers are 9th in shots for versus shot attempts percentage, Corsi 4, as you guys know it, at 5-on-5. So 9th best Corsi 4 percentage in the league at 5v5. They're the 5th best shots for percentage. So if you want to talk about shots that get on net, they're very good at generating shots and preventing the other team from generating shots as well. And then they're 15th in the league in expected goals for percentage. So when you take that Corsi and apply quality to it, they're the 15th best team in quality shot attempts versus quality shot attempts against. So that clearly screams to me that they are a team that at 5-on-5 possesses the puck a lot and they forecheck pretty aggressively. So that's where you're going to struggle, is at 5v5 because of how they play the game. But if you come out and you try to match that energy and you can draw penalties, just basically, again, we talk about the 3 keys of the game. My big one is forecheck and the second one is make the most out of the power play. Get back on track power play wise. Scotty, do you have a key to the game to speak for this one?
I mean, honestly, I think like my biggest takeaway is not the right word because it hasn't happened yet. But the biggest thing I've circled is like Reimer in net. Like that's a very I don't want to say like bold, but like that is a coaching decision that has been made, right? Like that we've had 2 games off since our last game. It would be very easy to just roll Husso out there again. This is clearly an intentional coaching decision to put Reimer out there. So you need him to do well. I think that is mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a first goal prediction?
We haven't been keeping track of these at all.
No, but it's always fun to say.
No, it is. I'm glad we're doing it. I'm just saying we should like keep tabs on it too.
I just don't want to be wrong, so I don't do it.
well, then you wouldn't do much. Man, I don't know. Give me DeBrincat. Back on the horse. Named Friday.
Named Friday, absolutely. All right, I mean that's a good one, especially considering how bad their penalty kill is, and he'll get a lot of power play minutes. I'll go Shane Gostisbehere then. Same reason.
Nice.
You'll get a lot of power play minutes, a lot of opportunities to score. Given if the Panthers take any penalties, of course, that's always a wild card that you don't know the answer to. But all right,
no, you
Scotty,
don't know the answer.
You don't know the answer. Do you have any final thoughts, my dude?
We ball.
We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, recapping the game against the Florida Panthers. So stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.